We've all felt that little pull before. You're scrolling late at night, half tired, not really looking for anything, and then it stops you. Wide open acres, a sky that goes on forever, a quiet dirt lane, and a price that, for the first time in a long time, actually feels possible. And a small voice in the back of your mind says it plain and simple. Maybe this is the one. Maybe this is the place. We know that feeling because we felt it too. And here's the gentle truth we want to start with before anything else. That listing was written to give you exactly that feeling. Every photo, every word, every number in it was chosen to move your heart before your head has a chance to catch up. That doesn't make the seller a villain. It just means the picture is doing a job, and the job is to sell you a dream. But the dream is never the whole story. Everything that listing isn't telling you about that land, everything that could turn your savings into a slow, expensive headache, is already written down. It's sitting in a public record that anyone can open for free, and that almost nobody opens before they wire the money. Not because they're careless, because no one ever showed them where to look. And that's the quiet unfairness of it. The people most likely to get hurt on a cheap parcel are the ones stretching to afford it in the first place, the ones for whom this land is a real dream and not a side bet. They're doing everything right except the one thing nobody ever taught them. So consider this the thing nobody taught you. So that's what we're going to do today, you and us together. We're going to open that record. You don't need to be a realtor, and you don't need to be a lawyer. You need to know the one place to look and the 5 things to look for. And by the time this video is over, you'll have both. And you'll never look at a pretty photo and a low price the same way again. Now, everybody wants the same thing when they start shopping for land. They want the one search, the single click that tells them everything, that spits out one clean answer, good deal or bad deal, buy, or walk away. We understand why. It would make all of this so much easier. So we'll be honest with you the way we'd want somebody to be honest with us. There is no magic button. Nothing on the internet takes a piece of raw land and hands you a verdict. And anyone selling you that is selling you the same false comfort as the listing itself. But here's what's real, and it's better than a magic button, because you can actually trust it. There is one record that comes closer than anything else. It's the county's own record of the parcel, and from that one starting point, you can run 5 checks, 5 plain questions. And those 5 questions are the difference between a bargain and a trap. And you can ask every one of them before you ever spend $1. That's the promise here. Not a shortcut, a system, something you can run on any parcel in any county in the country in about 10 minutes at your own kitchen table. Once you've done it 2 or 3 times, it becomes second nature. The same way checking the oil before a long drive becomes second nature. And the best part is, it works exactly the same whether the land is $5,000 or $50,000, whether it's a single acre or 100 of them. Same record, same 5 questions, every time. The land changes. The homework doesn't. So let us show you how it works. Before we open anything, let's be clear about where all of this comes from, because that matters. This isn't our opinion. It isn't a scare story cooked up to get you nervous. It's the public record. And the beautiful thing about the public record is that it doesn't take the seller's side. It doesn't take anybody's side. It just says what's true. Think for a second about who actually creates these records. The surveyor who walked the boundary and drew the plat. The clerk who recorded the deed. The assessor who set the taxes. None of them work for the seller, and none of them are trying to close a sale. They're just keeping the county's books straight, and that's exactly what makes their work worth more to you than anything written in the listing. We'll tell you straight who we are and who we aren't. We're not realtors, and we're not lawyers. We're the folks who spend our weekends digging through county records so that you walk into this knowing exactly what to ask. That's it. Everything we're about to show you comes from documents that anyone can pull. the county's parcel viewer and its mapping system, the plat and the deed, the federal flood map, the state's well logs, the PERS test and the soil survey, the tax roll, and the zoning ordinance that governs what you can and can't do on the ground. And here's the reframe that makes this whole thing work, so hold on to it. In most places, the seller is under no real obligation to tell you what's wrong with that land. They don't have to volunteer that you can't legally drive to it, or that half of it floods, or that nobody's ever hit water within 500 feet of it. But the county already wrote it down. The problem is already on paper. Reading it yourself before you sign is the whole difference between buying a dream and buying a problem you'll spend years trying to fix. One more thing, and we mean this. Always confirm what you find with the county offices and with a licensed professional before you sign anything. A parcel viewer is a starting point, not a final word. But when you walk into that assessor's office already knowing what to ask, you're a different kind of buyer. You're the one who can't be rushed and can't be fooled. So, let's go open the record. Start here with the master key. Every county in America keeps a parcel record, and most of them now put it online in what's usually called a parcel viewer or a GIS map. You find it by searching the county name, the state, and the words parcel viewer or GIS. When it comes up, you type in the property address or the parcel number from the listing, and something quietly remarkable happens. The land appears on a map with its real boundaries drawn, and beside it, the owner of record, the tax status, the zoning, the acreage, and very often a flood overlay laid right on top of it. All of it in one place, all free, and all before you said a single word to the seller. And take a minute to click around in there, because most of these viewers have layers you can switch on and off. A flood layer, a soil layer, sometimes wetlands, sometimes the zoning districts, sometimes the neighboring parcels, and the names of who owns them. Every layer you toggle on is one more free answer the seller was never going to hand you. Now, not every county has a slick online viewer. Some smaller, more rural counties still keep the good stuff on paper in the assessor's office and the recorder's office. Don't let that stop you for a second. A phone call to the county clerk or a short drive to the courthouse gets you those very same records and often a helpful human being who'll point you straight to them. The record exists everywhere. It's just a little easier to reach in some counties than in others. That's the one search. Not because it answers every question by itself. It's the door that every other check opens from. Once you're standing in that record, you can start asking the 5 questions that actually matter. Let's take them one at a time. Check 1. Legal access. And we're putting this one first on purpose because it ends more deals, quietly and permanently, than any other problem on this list. Here's the trap. You look at the satellite image and you can plainly see a road running right up to the property. Your eyes tell you, of course you can get there, there's the road. But a road you can see is not the same thing as a road you have the legal right to use. That dirt track might cross 3 private parcels that belong to somebody else, and that somebody is under no obligation to let you drive across their land to reach yours. What you're looking for on the plat and in the deed is a recorded easement, a legal, written, recorded right-of-way that guarantees you the ability to reach your own property. If it's there, wonderful. If it isn't, you need to understand what that means, because it's severe. You can buy a beautiful parcel, own it free and clear, hold the deed in your hand, and still not be legally allowed to drive to it. It's called being landlocked, and it can turn 10 affordable acres into a piece of ground you can look at but never truly use. So on this one, you don't guess and you don't take the seller's word for it. You find the recorded access in writing, or you find out exactly why there isn't any. And be careful with the comfortable sounding fixes, because they're softer than they look. Somebody might tell you there's an easement by necessity, or that folks have driven that track for 30 years, so surely it's fine. Maybe. But an easement by necessity often has to be won in court, and that costs real money and real time. A path people have simply used for years is not the same as a right recorded in the deed. And if the access does cross other owners, ask one more question. Is there a road maintenance agreement, in writing, that spells out who plows it, who grades it, and who pays when it washes out in a hard spring? Because a shared road with no agreement is just a future argument you haven't had yet. We've watched this exact thing play out. A fellow finds 10 acres at a price that feels like a gift, closes fast before somebody else grabs it, and only afterward learns the one way and crosses a neighbor who has no interest in company. Now he owns land he can walk onto from the road on a good day, but can't run a driveway to, can't pull a build permit for, and can't sell to anyone who does their homework. 10 minutes on the plat would have told him all of that, for free, before he ever wired a cent. Quick pause here, because this is exactly the kind of thing that costs people thousands of dollars. Everything we're walking you through, the access check, the flood check, the well logs, the tax records, we put all of it into one printable guide called 50 Catches Hidden in Cheap Land Listings. It's the 50 things that quietly kill a cheap parcel. And it comes with a 75-question checklist you can take straight to the county clerk, the assessor, and the seller. Exactly what to ask before you call, before you visit, and before you sign. It's $14.99. The link is down in the description, and one catch it helps you spot pays for it 100 times over. All right, back to the record. Check 2, flood and wetlands. And this one is easy to start because you can usually pull it right from the same map you're already looking at. From the GIS or from the Federal Flood Map Service, you bring up the flood zone for that exact parcel. Now, here's where the land itself can fool you. In dry country, a piece of ground that's lush and green with a pretty creek winding through it looks like a genuine gift. Everything around it is brown, and this one's alive. But that green can be a warning as much as a blessing. If the parcel sits in a flood zone, building there means raising your home up on expensive elevation, and it means carrying flood insurance for as long as you own it, year after year. And if that lush ground is a protected wetland, the situation gets more serious still. You may not be allowed to build on it or even to fill it without a federal permit that's slow, costly, and very often simply denied. People buy that green acre imagining a garden and a pond, and they find out afterward that the law considers it a wetland they can't touch. It also helps to know what you're actually reading on that map. The high-risk zones are the ones that trigger the insurance requirement and the elevation cost. And there's usually a base flood elevation, a line the water is expected to reach, that your finished floor has to sit above. And a wetland isn't always a swamp you can see with your own eyes. It can be quietly delineated on a map even when the ground looks bone dry for half the year, which is precisely how it catches people. So you don't judge it from the pretty photos. You read the designation, so you check the flood map, and if the ground looks suspiciously wet and green in a dry region, you treat that as a question to answer, not a bonus to celebrate. The record will tell you which one it is. Check 3. Water. And this is the one that decides, more than almost anything else, whether a piece of land can actually be lived on. Because a home needs water, and out on raw rural land, that usually means drilling a well. So before you fall in love, you go to your state's well-logged database. Most states keep one, a public record of the wells that have been drilled. And it will tell you something the listing never will. How deep did the neighbors have to go? And did they actually hit water when they got there? That number matters enormously to your wallet. On average, drilling a well runs somewhere around $5,500. And if the water table is friendly, that's a manageable cost. But once you're fighting through bedrock or chasing a water table that sits far deeper than you hoped, that price can climb past $35,000. That's not a rounding error on a cheap parcel. That's the kind of number that quietly erases every dollar you thought you were saving on the land. And there's a harder version of this. Sometimes the well logs, or the lack of them, tell you there just isn't reliable groundwater there at all. No water underneath and no hauling service willing to truck it in, and that land simply cannot be lived on at any price. It doesn't matter how cheap it was, and there are two things about drilling that catch people off guard. The first is that you pay for the hole whether or not it finds water. A driller charges by the foot, so a dry hole still empties your wallet. And then you're paying all over again to try somewhere else on the lot. So it's worth a phone call to a couple of well drillers who actually work that county and asking them straight what they've been hitting in that area and how deep. The second, one surprises folks out west especially. In a lot of western states, the water underneath your own land may not legally be yours to pump. Those states run on water rights that are owned and recorded separately from the dirt itself, and a parcel that comes with no water right can be a parcel you're simply not allowed to draw from. So in that part of the country, you check the water right with the same care you give the deed. So you check the neighbor's wells before you buy, not after. Water is the difference between a homestead and a very expensive place to stand. Check 4. Buildability. Let's say the access is clean, the flood map is friendly, and the water is there. There's still one more thing the ground has to do before it can hold a home, and that's handle your waste. Out in the country, with no city sewer for miles, that means a septic system. And a septic system only works if the soil will accept it. The way you find that out is a perk test, short for percolation, along with a look at the soil survey for that area. The perk test is simple. It measures how fast water drains through the ground. If the soil drains too slowly, the county will not approve a septic system, and if the county won't approve septic, they will never let you put a permanent home on that land. That's the whole game, decided by dirt. A perk test costs somewhere around $1,000, and we know nobody loves spending $1,000 before they even own the place. But weigh it against the alternative. $1,000 is a small price to find out, in advance, whether you're buying a home site or a lot the county will never let you live on. So you get the perk test, or you make your offer contingent on one passing. Never assume the ground will take a septic just because it looks like good solid earth. Looks have nothing to do with it. And even when the ground does take a septic, know that there's more than one kind. If the soil is marginal or the water table sits high, the county may only allow an engineered system, a mound, or something similar, and those can cost several times what a plain conventional system runs. So a passing perk test is a green light, but it isn't always a cheap one. While you're at it, look hard at the shape of the land too. A steep slope, a deep frost line, or a setback rule that pushes your house far back off the road can each quietly add to what it costs to actually build there. The county planning office will tell you the setbacks if you ask. They're not keeping it a secret. It's just that hardly anybody thinks to ask before the land is already theirs. Check 5. The paper. And this last one is really a small stack of records because the ground can be perfect and the paperwork can still ruin you. So you read it. First, a tax roll, which you can usually reach right from that same parcel record. You're looking for two things: back taxes and liens. Because in a lot of places, unpaid taxes and certain liens don't stay behind with the old owner. They ride along with the land, and the day you take the deed, they quietly become your problem. Nobody mentions that at closing if you don't ask. Then you read the zoning and you read the deed itself, because this is where you find out what you're actually allowed to do on your own property. And it's not always what you assumed. Is full-time living even permitted here, or is this zoned in a way that only allows seasonal use? Can you live in an RV while you build, and if so, for how long? and under what conditions. Is there a minimum square footage you're required to build? A size of house you can't legally go below that quietly puts the whole thing out of your budget? These aren't rare surprises. They're written into the ordinances and the deed restrictions, sitting there in plain language, waiting for someone to actually read them. And there are two more items hiding in that same stack that catch good people every single year. The first is mineral rights. In a lot of rural country, the rights to whatever sits under the ground, the oil, the gas, the minerals, were sold off or held back years ago, separate from the surface itself. You can own the land and not own what's beneath it. And in some places, the party that holds those rights has the legal ability to come onto your surface to get at them. So you check whether the minerals convey with the sale or whether they were severed a long time ago. The second is the fine print of a rural subdivision. If the parcel sits inside one of those big recreational land developments, there may be a property owners association with yearly dues and a road agreement that binds you to a share of the upkeep. None of that is bad on its own. You just want to know it's there before it's yours, not after the first bill lands in your mailbox. And here's the thread that ties all 5 of these together, so it stays with you. Every single one of these checks, the access, the flood, the water, the buildability, the paper, lives in a record you can pull for free. And every single one of them is something the listing will never volunteer on its own. The photo shows you the sky, the record shows you the ground, and you get to read both before you decide. One more thing before we get to the part nobody talks about. If you're not just looking at land, but weighing a cheap house or even a whole new state to move to, we bundled everything into one set called the Complete Cheap Living Field Edition. You get all 3 guides, the 50 land catches, the 40 catches hidden in cheap houses, and the state-by-state notebook on where living is genuinely still cheap and what the property taxes really run. And in the bundle, the due diligence worksheet pack is free. The property comparison sheet, the county office call log, the site visit inspection sheet, and the budget calculator. All printable, all fill in the blank, all the things we actually use ourselves. It's about $45 of guides for $29.99. The link's in the description, and we'll tell you what we always tell you. One bad deal costs more than the whole collection. Now, here's where the real money hides. Let's talk plainly about how this whole cheap land business actually works. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it'll protect you for the rest of your life. The entire thing runs on one gap, the gap between the listing and the record. The seller who lists a landlocked, waterless, or unbuildable parcel under a gorgeous photo and a tempting price isn't always lying to you. Often, he's just letting the picture do the talking and staying very quiet about everything else. Because every record you don't pull is money he gets to keep. And the ones who really work this game know it cold. They're counting on the fact that a beautiful photo shuts down the part of your brain that asks questions, and that hardly anyone bothers to pull the plat. So they price it just low enough to keep your heart running out ahead of your head. A low price by itself is not proof of a scam. But when the number seems too good, on land that nobody local seems to be buying, that's your cue to pull every record twice. Not your cue to hurry. And here's the part that should make you feel better, not worse. You don't have to outsmart anybody or beat them at some game. You just have to slow down for 10 minutes and read. The whole edge they rely on vanishes the moment a buyer opens the record. That's the entire defense. It's free, and it's sitting there waiting for you right now. And over the years, the whole marketplace drifted right along with him. The websites got better and better at showing you the sky, the sunset, the acreage, the dream. They got very good at the photo. They never got good at the plat. The system quietly trained a generation of buyers to shop with their hearts and to close before they read. There's nothing sinister in that. It's simply what happens when everybody gets rewarded for the feeling and nobody gets rewarded for the fine print. So we want to be careful here, because it would be easy to turn this into a story about villains. And that's not the truth either. The buyer who got burned wasn't a fool, and he wasn't careless or lazy. He just never learned that the answers were sitting in a free county record the whole time, waiting for him. Nobody ever handed him the map. That's the only real difference between him and the buyer who walked away clean. Knowledge freely available that one of them happened to have and the other one didn't. And this is where it gets personal, especially if you're buying later in life. If you're 55 or 65, and this is the last piece of ground you ever plan to own, the place you picture yourself building the rest of your story on, then you cannot afford to be the one who finds out the truth after the money's already wired. You just can't. But here's the good news. You don't have to be. 10 quiet minutes in the county record is the whole difference between the land that breaks you and the land that is, honestly and finally, yours. So we want to hear from you, and we do read these. Have you ever actually pulled a county record on a piece of land before you bought it? Or did you find out what was wrong the hard way, after the deed was already in your name? Tell us down in the comments, because your story is the thing that saves the next person scrolling through this at midnight with hope in their chest. And if this was useful, stay with us, because the natural next step is a hard one. Next time, we're going to walk through the 5 types of cheap land that look absolutely perfect right up until the moment it's too late. The parcels that pass the pretty photo test and fail everything that actually matters. You'll want to see those before you make an offer, not after. And we'll do it the same way we did today. Real records, real questions, no scare stories, and no hype. Just the quiet homework that keeps your money where it belongs, which is in your pocket, and then in the ground you actually chose with your eyes wide open. Until then, remember the one thing this whole video comes down to. The listing will always tell you what they want you to see. The record tells you what's actually there. So pull it, read it, ask your questions, all of them, out loud, to the county and to the seller. And when you finally do sign your name, sign it knowing exactly what you're standing on. That's how you buy land. That's how you buy it right.